When you were playing a video game, have you wondered how did the main villain become evil instead of the events for this game? Well, apparently Tetsuya Nomura wondered that when he was playing the original Final Fantasy. It was 2021 and E3 still existed. Not gonna lie, I kind of miss E3. I don't know if I'm the only one, but that wouldn't really surprise me though. Anyway, during E3 2021, Square Enix had their own Nintendo Direct-like thing named Square Enix Presents, and at that event, a Final Fantasy spin-off was announced, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. This game is about Jack Garland, aka Garland from Final Fantasy 1. This game is about his entire origin story and how he became Garland. And this game was a collab between Team Ninja and Square Enix, and in my personal opinion, I don't think it was that bad. I think it was personally my favorite Final Fantasy game, well, besides Final Fantasy 16, of course. Some people may think otherwise. Yeah, I know, 2 Final Fantasy games that are considered bad by the community are my favorites. You know what? I don't care. This game was notorious. Kind of. People thought this game was gonna be some wannabe edgy cringe, but it ended up just being campy in the funniest way possible. This game tends to feel like it doesn't take itself seriously, and at times it really doesn't feel like a serious game at all, especially because of Jack. So in today's video, I'll be talking about this unserious game and why I think it's great. So I'll talk about the gameplay first before getting into anything else. Also, major spoilers ahead. So if you want to enjoy this game for yourself and not get spoiled, then you probably shouldn't watch this video. Okay, moving on. Before getting into gameplay, I just want to talk about a bug I ran into when I first opened this game on PC. For some reason, my controller didn't work, so I had to open big picture mode on Steam and reload the game, and now the controller works. And now I don't need to open big picture mode to use the controller anymore. I can just load up the game and just use it off rip now. Awesome job, Koei Tecmo. Okay, now on to the gameplay. So this game is kind of a Souls-like, well, that's at least what the media wants you to think. In my opinion, this game leans to being more of a hack and slash than a Souls-like. In this game, you can use a basic attack and use that basic attack to combo into an ability with one of the trigger buttons or whatever you have it set as. And there's actually quite a lot of these abilities in this game, and some of them are extremely broken. And you actually don't have a heavy attack in this game. Well, you do, kind of. Press and hold the basic attack button to use a charge attack, which is kind of a heavy attack, I guess. And just like any other video game, you can dodge and you can block attacks. This game doesn't have a perfect dodge, but it has perfect blocking, but they call it parrying in this game. Perfect blocking allows you to block all damage, including damage to your break meter. Yeah, that yellow bar at the bottom of the screen is your break meter. Speaking of the break meter, other enemies have one too. And if you deplete their break meter, you can use Soul Burst on them, which is just a glorified finisher. Another mechanic related to the break meter is the Soul Shield. It's basically another parry, except it's a very risky parry with high rewards. If you can use the Soul Shield to parry a special attack, aka these purple ones, you can take these special attacks and use them against the enemy, which is very neat. In this game, you have the ability to change jobs, just like the old Final Fantasy games. In this game, there are 3 tiers of jobs: basic, advanced, and expert. Basic and advanced jobs are usually not as good as expert jobs, but that's obvious. Throughout most of this game, I used the Dark Knight job, and at the end of the game, I had other jobs like Tyrant and Sage. Expert jobs like the one I mentioned require other jobs to unlock them. For example, Dark Knight requires Warrior, Berserker, and Black Mage to unlock. And Sage requires Black Mage and White Mage to unlock. And you get the best magic skill in the game, aka Ultima, and it's extremely broken. And you can literally nuke an entire area with Ultima. And also, Ultima can just destroy health bars nearly instantly. It's just kind of insane. Jobs come with abilities, and sometimes these abilities can be buffs or attacks. And like I mentioned before, some of these abilities can be extremely broken. For example, enchant. This is probably the most broken ability in the game. You can enchant your weapon with any spell. For example, I used Thunder 3, and this shreds enemy health bars, especially if you pair it up with an ability like Double Dragon Combo, which is something you can learn via the Tyrant skill tree. And yeah, before I forget, this game has skill trees. You can level up jobs via XP or using anima shards, which are crystal shards that can give you job points. And yeah, if you level up a job, you can get job points. And via these trees, you can increase your job affinity, which can give you many benefits, including more job XP. Equipment in this game can also give you job affinities as well. And weapons can also have stuff like special abilities attached to them. So if you find a weapon that you like, you can upgrade it via the smithy and keep it forever. I did not do this at all, by the way. I barely upgraded any of my weapons in this game. And the only piece of equipment that I upgraded was my hat. I wore this through most of the game. Also, you can talk to NPCs via the talk menu, but I've never touched that in a day in my life. This game also has multiplayer, but I've never bothered to even play it. This game is divided into two types of missions: main missions and side missions. Side missions are just probably the most forgettable part of this game. They only exist to give you job upgrades for party members and upgrades for the smithy. Side missions also tend to have you refight bosses from earlier. Like, for example, having to fight the Fire Fiend to unlock a job for Neon. And now, main missions is how the story progresses, and you have to play them all to reach the ending of the game, which is quite obvious, to be honest. Mission areas are quite varied. We got a castle, a seaside cave, another castle, but this one looks suspiciously like Temple Run. Basically, there's a lot of variety. But unfortunately, missions are plagued by bad level design and barely any unique enemy encounters. Like, you encounter the same enemies in basically every mission. It's just kind of crazy. Like, the game introduces probably like 2-3 new enemies nearing the end of the game, but that's it. And it's kind of crazy, like, especially when you compare it to a game like Astral Chain that has over 100 different enemies. It's just kind of sad. Missions do have interesting stuff sometimes. For example, in the Western Keep, aka the level that looks like Temple Run, there's a giant ballista. But yeah, other games that had stuff like this, like in Dark Souls 3, there's a whole area with a giant ballista as well. But there's also another area in the game that has a giant laser cannon. But once again, I think other games have had stuff like this. Now that I think about it, these missions don't really have anything interesting, do they? Okay, but then again, Ninja Gaiden and Neo's level design wasn't all that good either. I haven't played WoW long, so I have no idea if they improved or not. Overall, this game's level design is just mediocre. The gameplay and the bosses are 100% the best part of this game. Now, I heard that the DLC includes new missions, but I could never get my hands on it, unfortunately, so I can't say whether or not the DLC missions are actually better than the base game or not. Just like I said earlier, the bosses are the best part of this game. Bosses in this game don't tend to have complicated movesets, but the bosses are also much harder depending on the difficulty you played on. I played on normal because, well, games like this tend to have some stupid junk that'll make you die instantly. So that's why I didn't play on hard mode or any other difficulty like chaos. Also, an example of this game pulling some stupid junk to kill you instantly is Tonberries. Except I'm pretty sure that's just a thing in just Final Fantasy in general with Tonberries, how they can just insta kill you. Because most of their attacks, they ignore defense, even in Stranger of Paradise, which is really funny. Only problem playing on normal mode is that bosses can range from being really easy to what the fudge is this difficulty spike. For example, the final fiend of the game, the Kraken. This guy has an insane difficulty spike compared to other bosses, and then the boss after this one is actually easier in comparison. Like, well, how does that happen? Now, the bosses in this game are probably more comparable to something like Neo, and I'm gonna be honest, I've never completed a Neo game at all. But I've beaten some bosses in the game. Can't remember what though. Actually, I have no idea if they're comparable at all. I'm just saying stuff at this point. Anyway, bosses in this game are kind of like Sekiro bosses. If you deplete their break gauge, you can instantly end their first phase by using a soul burst. And also, depleting their health to half is also good enough, because then you can also get a soul burst on there and then just enter the second phase. Almost every boss in this game have 2 phases, even the final boss. And there's only like 2 bosses in this game that have 1 phase, and both of them are the same dude that you just fight twice. Now, my favorite boss in this game is probably the final battle. He actually makes you utilize Soul Shield the most out of every boss in this game, especially in the second phase. The game gives you an infinite break gauge, similar to the one that you get in the final mission. But the problem is that even with the infinite break gauge, you cannot block everything with the Soul Shield. You actually have to dodge certain attacks, which are unblockable attacks, you know, which is pretty fair, to be honest. Now, my least favorite boss in this game is probably the Kraken. This guy sucks. He has so much health and he deals so much damage, and he can use a shield to make him take less damage, and then you have to hit these electrical thingamajigs to destroy his shield, which kind of sucks, to be honest. Overall, all the bosses in this game are pretty good, well, except for the Kraken. Okay, and maybe the Dimensional Crystal Matrix. This isn't even a boss, man. Also, by the way, this is the boss before the final boss. Okay, anyway, now it's time to move on to the story. The story of this game gets told through the missions in this game, and despite what people say about the story of this game, I actually kind of like it. Yeah, it has some issues and some very strange writing at times, and yeah, it can be bad in some areas, but I don't think the whole thing is bad. The story of this game is actually quite interesting when you get down to it. And yeah, this is going to be the longest segment of the video because I end up going far too much into detail. Anyway, time to get into it. Okay, so Jack is from a place named Lufinia. Now he's being sent to this place named Cornelia, and the names are similar, but I think that's on purpose. Anyway, all he remembers is that he wants to kill Chaos, and he meets two other dudes named Ash and Jed, and they're from Lufinia as well, and they set off to kill Chaos, and they meet the king, who tells them that Chaos is just a fairy tale, but Jack ain't falling for it. So Jack manages to convince the king, and the king is like, whatever, go ahead, go kill Chaos or whatever. And so Jack and the other two leave the castle and meet Princess Sarah, and she obviously has a thing for Jack. Guys, they're dating. Anyway, the gang goes to the Chaos Shrine the next day and fight Chaos, well, the Chaos Advent. It turns out that the Chaos Advent is actually just a woman named Neon who wants to become Chaos, and then probably the best cutscene in gaming history plays out.
So I decided to become a sacrifice. I offered myself to the darkness and prayed to become Chaos, hoping some band of heroes would defeat me and thus bring an end to this empty dream.
Bullshit.
And then Neon says he wants to join their gang, and once again we get another funny response from Jack.
We don't need someone whose heart's not in it.
He acts like this through most of the game, by the way. So following after that cutscene, the gang end up back at the Cornelia Castle, and now the king officially recognized them as Warriors of Light. And so now they go to Provoca to talk to the mayor and learn about the other crystals. So I actually seen people say that this part of the game with the other crystals wasn't explained well, but they actually do explain it at some point in the game. But anyway, time to continue. The gang arrive in Provoca and turns out that the mayor's dead. And he has been replaced with a pirate. And now they gotta go talk to the pirate mayor, and when they do, he acts like a goober and they have to fight him. After beating him, he tells them about Astos and how he knows about the crystals and other junk. And so he lets them ride his boat to Astos' castle, which is the place that looks suspiciously like Temple Run. And when they meet the man himself, he tells them about the crystals and where to find the wind crystal. And Jack asks him a question about whether or not he made a deal with Chaos, and he says no. But then he mentions how making a deal with Chaos requires a high price, aka all of their lives. This ends up coming back later. Okay, so now the wild goose chase for the crystals begin, and this is where the story takes kind of a nosedive, mostly because the rest of the game is just the gang hunting down the crystals and restoring them. Like, they go to a forest and a tower and then fudging space to restore the first crystal. Like, after restoring the first crystal, a new person joins the gang, but then it's back to restoring crystals. And the problem is that there's not really anything meaningful between these crystal hunting things, except for like memory cutscenes. And every now and then you will get these memory cutscenes, and they give you some info about where Jack and the others come from, excluding Neon because he's from Cornelia and not Lufinia. Basically, this dark mist will appear after beating a boss, and if the characters don't use their crystals to absorb the darkness, they get consumed by it and be forced to watch a memory from the past. After restoring the fire crystal, Astos will give you an explanation about that same exact thing. And he will also explain that the weird things you see in this world are left behind from Lufinia, like the space station and the tower from earlier. Also, Lufinia apparently created the world as well, which also doesn't get explained well enough in this game. So the devs tried to give the characters some character development in this game, but it didn't work out too well in my opinion. During the cutscene when you restore the Earth Crystal, it seems like they tried to give Ash some meaningful character development. And you get to learn stuff about him, but it's not really all that meaningful. Also, the intro to this boss fight in this mission is funny.
That season will never come. It will remain a dream so long as I live. Who I am,
I don't give a fuck who you are.
Now the next mission after this one tries to give some character development to Jed as well.
All that's left is the water crystal.
Yeah, and the final fiend.
Hey. You might not like this, but you know I like to speak my mind.
Let's go.
What was Blood even trying to do? There's also this cutscene that happens later when you beat the boss, and for some reason Jed tries to stop Jack from using his crystal, just so he can see the memory that comes from the mist. I don't know why he did this. Neon also has a Jed moment, except this goes across much better than it did for Jed, though Jack does have a funny response to her.
Try anything weird and you're out.
What the heck does he even mean by the hat? When all the crystals are restored, it's time to return to Cornelia, and the people are mad, mostly because there is now darkness in Cornelia, and also they're also mad about how there's now 5 warriors instead of 4. I guess they ain't the Fantastic Four anymore. Oh wait, wrong franchise. So they go to the castle, and the minister is mad, and the king is rightfully concerned. Jack doesn't care as per usual, and the minister starts to lash out against Jack and the others. And then Sarah comes in to defend her boyfriend. Guys, they're dating. Oh, and then pirates start to attack the town. Yeah, things go from 0 to 100 real quickly here. And the gang find the source, and it's the possessed Captain Vicky. Yeah, the pirate mayor from earlier, and they beat him up again, and they learn from him that his gang was consumed by the darkness and Astos is missing, and he tells them to follow the bats, and this is where the stars starts to pick up again. When they follow the bats, they find this tower from Lufinia, and Astos is here, but they have to kill a robot first. And when the robot blows up, some darkness spawns. Jack tries to use his crystal, but it doesn't work because the storage is full, which gets explained in the memory cutscene that plays. Jack has an existential crisis because of the memories he just seen, and a lore dump happens, and then Astos tells the gang to do his dirty work, aka going to this tower that looks like it's from Final Fantasy 15, and even plays a remix of Somnus from Final Fantasy 15. Jack's existential crisis continues during this mission, and there's a behemoth here, and Jack somehow knows what a behemoth is and is confused about this. After the behemoth dies, there's more lore about Lufinia, and the bats open a portal and the gang run through it, and now you get sent to this weird place, and now the gang wants answers about what Astos is doing. Astos tells them that light and dark are in balance thanks to their efforts, and so Astos lets them ask a question, and Jack wants to know who Astos really is, and Astos tells them to guess. Jack says a Lufinian. Astos explains that he isn't one of them and how he despises them and how he put a curse on some of the Lufinians and turned them into bats. And the reason why the bats wanted the gang to follow them is so they could kill Astos and remove the curse. And Jack says he doesn't care and he just wants Astos to give him a purpose, an enemy to kill. And then Astos responds with an explanation of how depressed he is, and then asks Jack if he remembers him. Jack says no. Astos gets mad and they have to fight them. But then at half health, Astos gets mad again and rants about how he hates the Lufinians and transforms, and then they kick his butt again. And after that, another memory cutscene plays, and this is where you learn about how Astos was essentially Jack's right-hand man and his best friend. And you also learn that Jack wanted Astos to be his accomplice so that he could change everything that the Lufinians did. No idea what caused him to act like that though. After the cutscene ends, Astos doesn't blame Jack for forgetting everything because the Lufinians were the ones erasing his memories. But despite that, he hated Jack for it. Jack asks him to forgive him, but Astos wishes he could. And he confirms that the Lufinian's curse will be undone when he dies, but they also die with him. He asks Jack to do one favor for him, and that favor is to kill every monster that emerges from their darkness. Jack agrees to it, but then he mentions how chaos finds its genesis when darkness and emotion are one. And this is when the final part of the game takes place. Astos dies and the place collapses. Now it's time for the final mission, Strangers of Paradise. After absolute cinema. I love when games name their final missions after the name of the game. Anyway, the gang returns to Cornelia, and the town is overrun with darkness and chaos. And also the entire royal family is dead, except for the two princesses. Jack tries to convince Princess Sarah to evacuate, but she doesn't want to leave, so Jack knocks her out. He tells the others to keep the princess safe while he carves out a path. Also, when you leave the castle, this funny cutscene plays.
You revived the crystals! This is all your fault!
Damn right it is.
Warriors of light! Don't make me laugh. You're nothing but servants of chaos!
So what are you gonna do about it? Wanna die here? Go and die.
And then when the path is carved out, the princess and the others arrive, and then she gives a speech. And then Jack and some of the others leave to catch a breather, and then they plan to take the others to Provoca, but then tragedy strikes. The princess and the others get attacked by monsters, and Jack has to kill them all. When all of the monsters die, he holds Sarah, and then she purposely drops a crystal. Now you get the final memory scene. You get some lore about Jack and Sarah, and this is where you learn that Jack's last name is Garland, and now officially comes full circle. Jack then gives Sarah a crystal, and yeah, this is the reason why you're even seeing this cutscene. You get another cutscene where Astos explaining that Lufinians are ripping holes in reality and how they send strangers like Jack to regulate it. He also mentions how they will reset the world when the balance of light and dark fails. Jack has no idea what Astos is even talking about. Astos explains how he's guiding him like he was told to, and then he mentions how the Lufinians cannot control chaos, and this is where their opportunity comes in. After Sarah dies, Jack has a breakdown, and then the others start whispering to each other about how it's now or never, and then Ash says something kind of crazy and out of line.
It's a shame what happened to the royal family. Still, I had fun this time.
And then they start telling Jack to give into his emotions and let the darkness take hold. And now Jack has to fight and kill his friends to let chaos take over him. And yeah, you actually gotta fight them in the game. And you actually can't die here, which is kind of funny. Remember what Astos said earlier in the game about how the requirement to make a deal with chaos is a high price? It mentions how making a deal with chaos requires a high price, aka all of their lives. This ends up coming back later. Yeah, the price is that Jack has to pay with the lives of his friends. And Jack starts freaking out when they all die, rightfully so. And now he doesn't know what to do. But then he remembers something that Astos mentioned in a memory.
Supposed to change the extraction point every time, you know. But just between us, it's almost always the Chaos Shrine.
Now it's time to go back to Chaos Shrine and end it all. Jack heads to the extraction point and goes in despite the Chaos Infection warning. And then Jack arrives to the tutorial area. And the Lufinians are worried that his corruption will link them back to the old world. So they try to decontaminate him. And once again, Jack has an unhinged moment.
Agent Jack Garland, can you hear me?
Clear as day.
The station you're in is infected. We're going to reinitialize it along with the old world. We've got no other choice.
Who do you think you are?
He's unintelligible.
Likely due to chaos corruption.
Jack, acknowledge.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
Dimensional crystal matrix ready. Standing by.
Do it.
Activating.
You arrogant bastards! Wanna play God? I won't let you! I'll rip that power from your hands and make it my own!
Jack destroys the decontamination crystal, and then Chaos himself finally appears. And Jack has to kill them and take his power. And of course, he does win against Chaos and takes his powers. And then Jack gives the Lufinians a warning about how he will come back one day, and they scoff at that idea. And they tell him that they will send the Warriors of Light after him, but then he realizes that him and the others can train the Warriors of Light, and then he resets the world. The rest of the ending just explains how Jack will train the Warriors of Light and also shows how the Fiends are actually Jack's friends, but I guess you can't spell friend without fiend, am I right? And another thing that explains how the gang was planning to turn Jack into chaos all along. The final cutscene shows Jack sitting in his throne, and then the Warriors of Light enter his throne room, and then My Way by Frank Sinatra plays, which is kind of funny. I'm not joking about that, by the way. It legit just plays that song for the credits. And yeah, that is the entire story for Stranger Paradise. And man, I think I went too much into detail. Anyway, despite its issues, I thought that it was pretty good and pretty interesting. And I can see how people would think the story is bad. I mean, it is campy and really goofy at times, but I think the story is a clean 7 out of 10. I love campy media. So to answer the question of whether or not this game is bad, I think it's pretty good, actually. Look, I can understand why people think the game is bad. The story tries to take itself too seriously, and it's just campy as all heck. And also, the story is just kind of messy in general. And also, the animations in this game are kind of janky looking, not to mention the fact that the models also look weird, especially Jack in this one cutscene. Why does he look like that? Also, like a point I made earlier, the difficulty scaling can just feel really weird at times. And also, in certain missions, the enemy placement can just be straight up... Okay, how can I say this? It reminds me of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. Like, what the heck is this hodgepodge of enemies? Also, I'm still thinking of the fact that one of the missions just kind of looks like Temple Run. Like, especially with how this area is just mostly straight lines. But despite those issues, there is indeed a lot to like about this game. In my personal opinion, this game is not as good as something like Final Fantasy 16, but I think it's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. And you know what? These games are pretty similar. Both of them are action-adventure games, and both of them lead into the hack and slash category, and both of them are hated by a lot of the Final Fantasy community. And also, both of them are some of my favorite games of all time. I kind of hope that one day Koei Tecmo will get to remake Final Fantasy 1, but it plays like Stranger of Paradise. Now that would be awesome. Anyway, if I were to give Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin a rating, I'd give it a clean 8.3 out of 10, which may be too high to some people, but I don't care. This is my personal opinion. Once again, this game has quite a few glaring issues, but despite it all, it's a pretty good Final Fantasy game, in my opinion, of course. But that's about it for me, dog. I'm out of here.